Hey guys, Caleb here, back again with more Red Knot. This time we have a book called Vengeance, the Tainted Realm, Book 1. It's by Ian Irvine. Irvine. Yeah, I fail with names. Author of the View from the Mirror series. I haven't read that, so I don't know if it's any good or not. I have no idea what this is. It's listed as Sci-Fi Fantasy. So, yeah. A realm in peril, a people betrayed, one slave holds the key, is the tagline, apparently, for the book. The cover is okay. It's basically a bunch of collage images. A single eye of some lady staring at me, a tree and some snow with somebody on horseback. I'm gonna assume it's a lady. And I like the spine. Like close to the spine on the front cover, it's a sword. I think it would be cooler if the sword went into the V for vengeance, but that's just me. So the back cover is rather plain, but still has the collage tree and person on a horse, as well as the sword near the spine. An epic tale of revenge and redemption. 10 years ago, 2 children witnessed a murder that still haunts them as adults. Tally watched as 2 masked figures killed her mother, and now she has sworn revenge, even though she is a slave, even though she is powerless, even though she is nothing in the eyes of those who live above ground. So you live underground? She will find her mother's killers and bring them to justice. Rix, heir to Height Spall's great fortune, is tormented by the fear that he's linked to the murder, and by a sickening nightmare that he's doomed to repeat it. When a chance meeting brings Tally and Rix together, the secrets of an entire kingdom are uncovered, and a villain out of legend returns to throw the land into chaos. Tally and Rix must learn to trust each other, and find a way to save the realm and themselves. Praise for Ian Irvine. Caleb can't pronounce somebody's name. Nothing new. Irvine can now consider himself comfortably ranked next to Robert Gordon, whoever the fuck that is, and David Eddings, still don't know who they are, and, more appropriately, the mighty Anne McCaffrey, still don't know who that is, by SFX. Wondrous world building. Locus. And then there's the dude's website. I guess the guys who published in really hard to read tiny red font. And then we have like a various copyright. Cover design by Lauren Payne Pinto. Cover images. Apparently, yeah, she got them off Stuttershock and just kind of collaged them together. Yeah, okay. Well, let's see here. Part 1, Escape. Some maps. Chapter 1. Matriarch Addie, can I check the solstice for you? Said Will, staring at the locked basalt door behind her. Can I, please? Addie frowned at the quivering, cross-eyed youth, then laid her scribing tool beside the partly engraved sheet of spelter and flexed her aching fingers. The solstice are for the matriarch's eyes only. Go and polish the clangors, whatever that crap that is. Will, who was neither handsome nor clever, knew that Addie only kept him around because he worked hard, and because years ago he had revealed a gift for Shililar Marosite. Okay. Having been robbed of their past, the matriarchs used even their weakest tools to protect Scython's future. Though Will was so lowly that he might never earn a tattoo, what's the significance of this? You're giving me a bunch of information, but you're not really telling me how all this matters. He desperately wanted to be special, no, to matter. But he had another reason for wanting to look at the solstice. One he dared not mention to anyone. A latter Chilliard had told him that there was something wrong, something the matriarchs weren't telling them. Perhaps heretical thought, something they didn't know. You can see your face in the clangors, he said, inflating his hollow chest. I've also fed the fireflies, 'cause I guess they're some kind of special creature or something, and cleaned out the Ephiloxor sump. Please, can I check the solstice? Addie studied her swollen knuckles, but did not reply. Why are the secret books called solstice anyway? Said Will. Because they comfort us in our bitter exile. I heard they order the matriarchs about like naughty children. Addie slapped him, though not as hard as he deserved. How dare you question the solstice, idiot youth? How is he questioning them? He just made a statement that he heard something. She didn't have to be an asshole. Being used to blows, Will merely rubbed his pockmarked cheek. If you just let me peek. We only check for new pages once a month. Okay, people are gonna hate me mentioning Lankara stuff, but is it like the Entity book where it's all blank except that it itself slowly reveals information? Is it something like that? But it's been a month. Look! A shiny goblet of quicksilver, freshly fallen from the coiled condenser of the wall clock, was rolling down its inclined planes toward today's brazen bucket. Today's the 9th. You always check the solstice on the 9th. I dare say I'll get around to it. How can you bear to wait? He said, jumping up and down. At my age, the only thing that excites me is soaking my aching feet. Besides, it's 3 years since the last new page appeared. The next page could come today. It might be there already. Though Will's eyes made reading a struggle, he loved books with a passion that shook his bones. The mere shape of letters sent him into ecstasies, but what stories the letters made! He had no words to express how he felt about the stories. Will did not own any book, not even the meanest little volume. The meanest little volume? Are the books attacking you? I made a Lankara comparison earlier, but if the books are actually coming alive and attacking you, there's something wrong here. And he longed to, desperately. Books were truth, their stories were the world, and the solstice were perfect books, the very soul of Scython, the matriarch said. He ached to read one so badly that his whole body trembled and the breath clotted in his throat. I'm not really sure I like switching up how things are worded, because at the same time I'm like, well, I'm glad you're trying out new ways to phrase something. At the same time, I'm just like, it kind of makes it awkward to read. I don't think any more pages are coming, lad. Addie pressed her fingertips against the blue triangle tattooed on her brow. I doubt the 13th book will ever be finished. Then it can't hurt if I look, can it? He cried, sensing victory. I suppose not. Why would she let him do this if only matriarchs can look at these books? Addie rose painfully, selected 3 simical phials from a rack, and shook them. In the first, watery fluid took on a subtle jade glow. The contents of the second thickened and bubbled like black porridge, and the third crystallized to a network of needles that radiated like pinpricks of sulphur-yellow light. A spiral on the basalt door was dotted with phial-sized holes. Addie inserted the light keys into the day's pattern and waited for it to recognize the colors. The lock sighed. The door opened into the chamber of the solstice. Touch nothing, she said to the gaping youth, and returned to her engraving. Unlike every other part of Scython, this chamber was uncarved, unpainted stone. It was a small cubic room, unfurnished save for a white Quizart table with a closed book on its far end, and, on the wall, to Will's right, a 4-shelf bookcase etched out of solid rock. The third and fourth shelves were empty. Tears formed as he gazed upon the mysterious books he had only ever glimpsed through the doorway. After much practice he could now read a page or two of a storybook before the pain in his eyes became blinding. But only the secret books could take him where he wanted to go, to a world and a life not walled in every direction. "Who is the scribe, Addie?" Will worshipped the unknown scribe for the elegance of his calligraphy and his mastery of bookmaking, but most of all for the stories he had given Scython. They were the purest truth of all. He often asked that question, but Addie never answered. Maybe she didn't know, and it worried him, because Will feared the scribe was in danger. If I could save him, he thought, I'd be the greatest hero of all. For some reason that there's nothing to indicate that's his own thoughts. No, normally you would italicize or put single quotation marks. Unless you're British, and then it would be reversed. He smiled at that. Will knew he was utterly insignificant. The top shelf contained 5 ancient solstices, all with worn brown covers, and each bore the main title, The Songs of Survival. These books, vital enough they had once been, were of least interest to Will, since the last had been completed 1,377 years ago. Their stories had ended long before. It was the future that called to him, the unfinished stories. On the second shelf stood the thick volumes entitled The Lore of Prosperity. There were 9 of these, and the last 5 formed a set called Industry. On Delvin had covers of pale mica with topazes embedded down the spine. On Metallix was written in white hot letters on sheets of beaten silver. Will could not tell what on Simthing, on Spagic, or on Catalyze were made from, for his eyes were aching now, his sight blurring. He covered his eyes for a moment. 9 books. Why were there 9 books on the second shelf? The 9th unfinished book, on Catalyze, should lie on the table, open at the last new page. His heart bruised itself on his breaststone as he counted them again. 5 books plus 9. Could On Catalyze be finished? If it was, this was amazing news, and he would be the one to tell it. He would be really special then. Yes, the last book on the shelf definitely said On Catalyze. Then what was the book on the table? A new book? The first new book in 312 years? Marguerite was anathema to his people, and Will had never asked how the pages came to write themselves, nor how each new book could appear in a locked room in Scython, deep underground, since Marguerite had been forbidden to all save their long-lost kings. The self-writing pages were proof of instruction from a higher power. The solstices were Scython's comfort in their agonizing exile, the only evidence that they still mattered. They are not alone. The cover of the new book was the dark, scaly gray of freshly cast iron. It was a thin volume, no more than 30 sheet iron pages. He could not read the crimson, deeply etched title from this angle, though it was too long to be The Lore of Prosperity. Will choked and had to bend double, panting. Not just a new book, but the first of the third shelf, and no one else in Scython had seen it. His eyes were flooding, his heart pounding, his mouth full of saliva. He swallowed painfully. Even from here, the book had a peculiar smell, oily sweet, then bitter underneath, yet strangely appealing. He took a deep sniff. The inside of his nose burnt. His head spun, and he felt an instant bliss. The tendrils webbed across his inner eye. He shook his head. They disappeared, and he sniffed again. wanting that bliss to take him away from his life of drudgery. But he wanted the iron book more. What story did it tell? Could it be the scribe's own? He turned to call Addie, then hesitated. She would shoo him off, and the three matriarchs would closet themselves with the new book for weeks. Afterwards, they would meet with the leaders of the 4 levels of Scython, the master Scythemister, the heads of the other guilds, and the overseer of the pale slaves. Then the new book would be locked away, and Will would go back to scraping muck out of the exfolios for the rest of his life. But his second Shieldar had said the scribe was in danger. Will had to read his story. He glanced through the doorway. Addie's old head was bent over her engraving, but she would soon remember and order him back to work. Shaking all over, Will took a step towards the marble table, and the ache in his eyes came howling back. He closed his worst eye, the left, and when the throbbing eased, he took another step. For the only time in his life, he did feel special. He slid a foot forwards, then another. Each movement sent a spear through his temple, but he would have endured a lifetime of pain for 1 page of the story. Finally, he was standing over the book. From straight on, the etched writing was thickly crimson and ebbed in and out of focus. He sounded out the letters of the title. The Consolation of Vengeance. Vengeance? Will breathed, but whose? The scribe's? Even a nobody like himself could tell that this book was going to turn their world upside down. The other solstices set out stories about living underground, growing crops, and farming fish, healing, teaching, mining, smithing, criming, arts and crafts, order and disorder, defense. They described an existence that allowed no dissent, and had scarcely changed in centuries. But their enemy did not live underground. They occupied Synthonian's ancestral land of Scythe, which they called Heightspall. To exact vengeance, Scython's armies would have to venture up to the surface, and even an awkward, cross-eyed youth could dream of marching with them. Will knew not to touch the solstice. He had been warned 100 times, but oh, the temptation to be the first was irresistible. The book was perfection itself. He could have contemplated it for hours. He bent over it, pressing his lips to the cover. The iron was only blood-warm, yet his tears fizzed and steamed as they fell on the rough metal. He wanted to bawl, wanted to slip the book inside his shirt, hug it to his skin, never let it go. He shook off the fantasy. He was lowly Will, the stump, and he only had a minute. His trembling hand took hold of the cover. It was heavy. As he heaved it open, it shed scabrous gray flakes onto the white table. The writing on the iron pages was the same sluggish, oozing crimson as on the cover, but his straining eye could not bring it into focus. Was it protected, like the other solstice, against unauthorized use? Metallics had to be heated to the right temperature before it could be read, while each completed chapter of On Callus required the light of a different chemical flame. A mud-brain like himself would never decipher the protection. Frustrated, Will flapped the front cover, and a jagged edge tore his forefinger. Ow! He shook his hand. 6 spots of blood spatter across the first page, where they set like flakes of rust. Then, as he stared, the glyphs snapped into words he could read. Such perfect calligraphy! It was the greatest book of all. Will read the first page, and his eyes did not hurt at all. He turned the page, flicked blood onto the book, and read on. I can see, his voice soared out of his small, skinny body, to freedom. I can see. Addie let out a hoarse cry. Will, get out of there. He heard her shuffling across the basalt door, but Will did not move. Through the crimson letters brightened until they hurt his eyes. He had to keep reading. Addie, it's a new book. What does it say? She panted from the doorway. We're leaving Scython. He put his nose on the page, inhaling the tantalizing odor he could not get enough of. It was ecstasy. He turned the page. The rest of the book was blank, yet that had not mattered. In his inner eye the future was unrolling all by itself. "It's a new story," Will whispered, "the story of tomorrow." "Are you in Shillar?" Her voice was desperate with longing. Where are the solstices taking us? Are we finally going home?" "We're going." In an instant the world turned crimson. "It's the One!" Will gasped, horror overwhelming him. "Stop her!" Addie stumbled across and took him by the arm. "What are you seeing? Is it about me?" Will let out a cracked laugh. "She's changing the story, bringing the scribe to the brink." "Who are you seeing?" cried Addie. "Speak, lad. How could the One change the story written by the scribe Will worshipped? Surely she couldn't, unless the scribe was fallible. No, that could not be. But if the One was going to challenge him, she must have free will. It was a shocking, heretical thought. Could the One be as worthy as the scribe? Ah, what a story their contest would make! And the story was everything. He had to see how it ended. Addie struck him so hard that his head went sideways. "Answer me." It's the One. Don't talk nonsense, boy. What One?" "A pale slave, but—" "A slave is changing our future?" Addie choked. "Who?" "A girl." Will tore his gaze away from the book for a second, and gasped. "She's still a child." "What's her name?" "I don't know." Wild-eyed and frantic, Addie shook him. "When does this happen? Not for years and years." "When, boy? How long have we got to find her?" Will turned back to the last written page, tore open his finger on the rough edge, and dribbled blood across the page. The story was terrible, but he had to know who. Until she comes of age. "What are we to do?" said Addie, and he heard her hobbling around the table. "We don't know how to contact the scribe. We must obey the consolation of vengeance." The letters brightened until his eyes began to stream. Will began to scream, but even his vision blurred and his eyes bubbled and boiled into jelly that oozed out of his sockets. He could not tear his gaze away. He had longed to be special, and now he was. She tottered back to him, wiped his face, and he heard her weeping. "Why didn't you listen to me?" He took another sniff, and the pain was gone. "Stupid old woman," sneered Will. "Will can see so much more clearly now. Will free." "Will, what does she look like?" "She pale." "She the One." "Tell me," she cried, shaking him. "How am I to find this slave child among 85,000 pale, and see her dead?" "Ooh, so I guess you're the bad guy?" Whenever Mama wasn't watching, the huge man that Tolly called Tiny Head poked his white tongue out at her. Black spots on it were like crawling blowflies, and Tolly had to turn away before she sicked up her breakfast. It's called throw up, but whatever. She did not like Tiny Head, but he was helping them to escape. In a thousand years no pale had ever escaped from Scython, and Mama had tears in her eyes whenever she talked about going home. Not wanting to upset her again, Tolly clutched Mama's hand and kept her worries to herself. The further Tiny Head led them, the more alarming the tunnel art became, as if warning, "Try to escape and you'll die." For an hour of their journey the walls they passed were carved into the skeletons of burnt trees surrounded by ash like black snow. Then they walked along a dried-up river with water buffalo trapped in gray mud. Finally, as the passage became an endless desert, where spiny lizards picked salt crystals off sharp rocks, Tiny Head heaved open a stone door and stood to one side so they could go through. They had crossed into another world, one that was cold and dank and slimy underfoot, a vast oval cellar where mist hung in the stagnant air. It looked like the inside of a moldy old skull, and the stink of poisoned, decaying rats made Tally gag. "Here you are." Tiny Head flopped out his tongue. "All your troubles are over, Pale." Mama whirled, reaching up to him, but he slammed the door in her face. She let out a whimper. "You're hurting my hand, Mama," said Tolly. Her Mama crouched in front of Tally. holding her so tightly that she could hardly breathe. Mamma's blue eyes were wet, and Tally hated to see her so sad. "We're betrayed, little one. We're never going home." "Why not?" said Tally, looking around in confusion. Why had Tiny shut them in? Why hadn't she told Mamma her worries? Was this her fault? A familiar face carved into the stone high on the wall made her shiver. It was Life, the enemy's last and wickedest king, who had died long ago. She had often seen the tattooed Scythonians kneeling before his image. To her left, a series of dusty stone bins ran along the wall, partly concealed by tiers of barrels. On the right, hundreds of wooden crates were stacked nearly to the ceiling. In the center, 20 yards away, stood a stained black bench. The floor was damp and littered with pieces of fallen stone. Something rustled far across the cellar. Mamma looked around frantically. "Over here," she said, hauling Tally to the crates. "Squeeze into the middle where you can't be seen." Tally clung to her. "I don't like this place, Mamma." "Me either. And yet I feel close to our ancestors here. Hurry." Tally was a good little girl, so she bit her lip and edged into one of the gaps between the rotting crates. The floor was so slimy that her bare feet kept slipping. "Don't cry. I know how brave you are." Her mamma kissed her brow. "Tally," she choked, "if I don't come back, little Nan will give you your papa's letter when you come of age." "Mamma? Why would she say such a thing? Of course she would come back." "Shh." Mamma took Tally's hands in her own and drew a ragged breath. "Our family has a terrible enemy." The dead rat smell thickened and grew fouler. "Who, Mamma?" "I don't know. He's never seen, never heard, but he flutters in my nightmares like a foul Rythen? You're scaring me, Mamma. When you're older, you've got to find your gift and master it. It's the only way to beat him." Tally shivered. In Scython, Magiry was forbidden. Magiry meant death. What is Magiry? Magic? Children were beaten just for whispering the word. A hollow click from the far side of the cellar. Mamma jumped. "But, Mamma," said Tally, lowering her voice, "if our masters catch any slave using Magiry, they kill them." "Even innocent little children," said Mamma, hugging her desperately. "You must be very careful." Tally's voice rose. "Then how am I supposed to find my Magiry?" Mamma clapped a hand over Tally's mouth. "I don't know, child. Don't tell anyone about your gift. Trust no one." Tally pulled away. Is Tiny Head the enemy? She took hold of a splintered length of wood, wanting to jam it through his disgusting tongue. "Shh! You know what happens when you get angry." "I'm already angry, and I'm going—" "Forget him. He's nothing. When I find my gift, his head will be nothing. I'll blast it right off." "Tally, never say such things. You must lower your eyes and say, 'Yes, master.'" "I won't," Tally said furiously. "I hate our masters, and one day I'm going to escape." "Yes, one day," said Mamma dully. "But for now, promise you'll be a good little slave." "I can't." Mamma stroked Tally's golden hair. "You may think whatever fierce thoughts you like, little one, for one day you will be the noble lady Tally v. Torgrist. But in Scython you must always act the obedient slave." It frightened Tally to hear her mamma say such things. "All right," she muttered. She had a bad temper, and she knew it, but for Mamma's sake she would try. "I promise." Her mother looked doubtful. "I'll put a little glamour on you. It'll hide you as long as they don't look directly at you. Hold still." She put her hands on Tally's cheeks, whispered a word Tally could not make out, then drew her hands down Tally's sides, all the way to her feet. Tally's skin tingled when she looked down. Her body had blurred into the shadows. Magiry! Yeah, okay, so it is magic. She ached for it, feared it too. Something made an ugly scraping sound, closer this time, and her scalp felt as though grubs were creeping across it. "Stay here," Mamma said softly. "Don't look." "Mamma, what is that noise?" "I don't know." Mamma's teeth chattered. "But whatever happens, even if your gift comes, don't use it here." Mamma darted away, her pale blonde hair flying. Her bare feet skidded on the flagstones as she passed an ugly tapestry of 3 jackals fighting over the guts of a nobleman. recovered, then zigzagged between the barrels and the stone bins. She was a beautiful little bird, leading a snake away from her nest. But as she passed between a pair of stone raptors with flesh-tearing beaks, two masked figures came after her. Tally clutched at her crate, her fingers sticking into the powdery wood. "Mamma, look out!" she whispered, for the mask had fanged teeth and awful angry eyes. "Don't let them catch you." Then Mamma slipped and twisted her ankle, and the moment they caught her, Tally knew they were going to do something terrible. "No," she whimpered. "Mamma, get away." The big man caught Mamma's arms and held her while his accomplice, a bony woman, punched her in the mouth. "Treacherous pale scum," the woman hissed. Mamma sagged, staring at them like a mouse trapped by two cats, and Tally's front teeth began to throb. "Stop it, stop it. Mamma, use your gift on them." They dragged her to the black bench and heaved her onto it. The woman forced an oily green lump into Mamma's mouth, then passed the scrubby crystal back and forth over her head until the end glowed blue, scattering brilliant rays across the cellar. Mamma moaned and her toes curled. As the blue crystal glowed more brightly, pain stabbed around the horrid scar on Tally's left shoulder, her slave mark, and cold spread through her like venom. She shuddered and remembered to cover her eyes. Born to slavery in underground Scython, she had learned life's lesson in her stone cradle, obey or suffer. But the people who held her mamma weren't tattooed like Scythonians, and they were too big to be pale slaves. Who were they? Something made an ugly grinding sound. Mamma shrieked. "Careful," the man cried. "He won't pay if it's stuck," said the woman, and the grinding grew louder. What were they doing to Mamma? "It's got to be taken while she's alive," said the man. "Do you think I don't know that?" Tally peeped between her fingers and nearly screamed. Mamma's arms and legs were thrashing. Green foam was oozing from her nose, and a strand of hair dripped blood. "Mamma!" Tally could not breathe. For a moment she could hardly see. "I can't hold her," the man's voice was hoarse, his eyes darting. "Nor me, if you don't." The woman was pressing a metal rod against the top of Mamma's head, twisting and shoving, as if trying to force it in. Through the mouth of the mask her gray teeth were bared. She was grunting, and her hands were red. Why were they talking like that? Why were they hurting Mamma? Tally's breath came in painful gasps, and her stomach was full of fish hooks. She had to help Mamma, but Mamma had told her not to move. Only Marjorie could save Mamma now, but she had told Tally not to use it here. Yet if she didn't, Mamma was going to die, but Tally had promised. No, she had to break that promise. If she got into trouble, she would take her punishment. Tally had used Marjorie once before, when she was little. She had been really angry about something, and her gift had burst forth out of nowhere. She tried to summon it now, but it shrank from her mother's warning. Always hide your gift, and never use it or they'll find out and kill you. She tried and tried, but it would not come. Tally was desperate now. She had to save Mamma. The glamour would hide her, wouldn't it? She crept out, picked up a piece of stone, took aim at the woman's head, and hurled it with the fury her small body could muster, and missed her. "Ow!" cried the man, clapping a hand to the back of his head. What was that? Tally eased backwards to the crates, praying the glamour would hold. She felt with her foot for a bigger stone. The woman gave a last twist of her length of metal, withdrew it, and flicked a white disc, trailing a clump of bloody hair, to the floor. Was that a piece of Mamma's head? Tally was reaching for a fist-sized chunk of rock when the woman opened a pair of golden tongs behind Mamma's head, pushed in, and yanked. Tally heard an awful squelchy pop. Mamma's arms and legs jerked, then hung limp. "You've ended her," the man said hoarsely, shying away. "Who cares about a filthy pail?" said the woman, holding up the steaming tongs. "I got it in time." Tally's head spun and her eyes flooded. But for the crates she would have fallen down. Though she was only 8, she had seen all too many dead slaves. Why was this happening? Was it her fault? She should have run and led them away. She should have done something, anything. Had the evil woman killed Mama? No, she couldn't be dead. Mama, Mama, she whimpered, hurting all over. The man gasped. Did you hear her cry? You stupid fool, thought Tally. Now they'll kill you too. Are you useless? Sneered the woman. The man drew a long knife and waved it at her. She laughed in his face. Find the brat and finish it. The man took a lantern in his free hand and crept towards the stacked crates. The woman put on a long glove that shone like woven green metal. Tally sensed the whisper of Marjorie coming from it, and removed something around from the tongs. It looked like a black marble. She stripped off the glove so it turned inside out, trapping the black object inside. Now, horrible, horrible! She opened a vein in Mamma's neck and filled the glove with dripping blood, then tied a knot in the long wrist and thrust the glove down her front. Tally made out a crimson glow there, shining through the glove, but it went out. She checked on the man, who was at the other end of the stack, slowly moving her way. On the far wall of the cellar, the carved face of Liv shifted. Yellow moved in its stone eyes, and a foggy hand reached towards the woman, stretching and stretching as if to pluck out the glove. It was more Marjorie, but whose? There came a purple flash from behind a pile of barrels, like a spell going off, and the hand recoiled, then faded out. The woman froze, staring at the stone face, then laughed and picked up the gory tongs. "Oh," she whispered, "oh yes," and licked them clean. Tally saw her muddy eyes roll up until the whites were showing through the holes in the mask. Tally wanted to punch her nose flat. After checking that the man wasn't looking, the woman filled a square green metal tin with Mama's blood, twisted on a brass cap, and licked her bony fingers. Tally's eyes burnt and her nose was running. She wiped it on the back of her hand, fighting the urge to scream. If she made a sound, the man would cut her open like Mama. But she was much more scared of the evil woman with the crab-leg fingers and those awful eyes. She pressed a finger to the slave mark on her left shoulder for luck. Touching it always made her feel better. The man was tall, with a round, jiggling belly like a pudding basin. He was outside her hiding place now, and she caught a glimpse of the gleaming knife blade, as long as her arm. Tally recoiled and felt a shocking pain as a nail in one of the crates pierced her hip to the bone. Tears stung her eyes that she dared not move. If she made a sound, he would stab that knife right through her. The man was panting, and the spirits on his breath made her head spin. His hand shook as he raised the lantern, then lowered it. Silence fell, apart from a sickening drip-drip from the black bench. After Papa's terrible death, Mama had taught Tally how to hide. A slave must be invisible, she had said. Never be noticed and you'll be safe. No slave was ever safe, but Tally was the best of the slave kids at hiding. She traced the loops and whorls of her slave mark with a fingertip, trying to find comfort there, but nothing could comfort her now. Mama couldn't be dead. It wasn't possible, yet she was gone. He waited, as if he knew she was there. What if he pulled the crates away? She had to do something. She felt among the broken wood on the floor for the sharpest length, a piece as long as her forearm. If he came at her, she would shove it into his fat belly and run. Her arm was trembling so much she could hardly hold the weapon. Then, to her shame, Tally realized that Wee was running down her legs. She clamped her thighs together and, to distract herself, began to count her heartbeats, which were so loud that surely he could hear them. After another 20 beats, the man grunted and moved on. She kept still. He sprang back, hacking at the crates with a knife and roaring, "Ha! Got you!" Why wouldn't he, have an exclamation point there? Tally's heart leapt up her throat, and the nail ground into her hip bone. She was almost screaming from the pain, but she did not move. She was going to win this contest for Mama. With savage hacks of the knife, the man began to tear down the crates to her left. Smash! Crash! He was going to find her. How could she stop him? She eased off the nail, took hold of the lowest crate and heaved. It did not budge. The weight of all the crates above it was too great. More crates crashed down. It would not be long now. She could not go further backwards. The gap was too narrow, and she dared not wait. Once he saw her, he would jam the knife through her guts. Tally crouched, took hold of the lowest crate and heaved, using her legs this time. Even little girl slaves were strong, and she forced upward, slowly straightening her legs, until her back ached and her knees trembled. But she wasn't going to give in, ever. The moving crate scraped and squeaked. He swung around, trying to work out where the sound had come from. She gave an almighty heave. The 10 high stacks swayed. Then, with a roar, the lot fell down on him. Tally scurried sideways into a new gap and hid in the darkness. The man groaned. The woman appeared, taking her time, and heaved the crates aside. The man's face was covered in blood. Ha! thought Tally. Take that. But it could never make up for what they had done to Mamma. What happened? He moaned. Stop whining, said the woman disgustedly. You pulled them down on yourself. Did you find anything? 50 heartbeats passed. Then the man lurched away. Must have been rats. Come on. I need another drink. I'll pour it down your throat until you choke. Tally pressed a fingertip against the nail wound, trying to heal it away. Nurse Bet had taught her, but the hole went too deep. The beads of blood on her fingers were as bright as jewels, as bright as Mamma's blood. Mamma! Her eyes flooded. The woman pulled on the dangling rope, and with a screech, an iron staircase corkscrewed down. Tally felt sure the point at the bottom was going to twist right through Mamma, but it brushed by her tiny waist before grounding on the black bench. The man shot up the steps, a rat running away from a ferret. The staircase was a coiled spring quivering under his weight. But then the woman picked up the tin of blood, climbed onto the bench, and stepped onto Mamma's chest as though she was rubbish. One of Mamma's ribs snapped like the wishbone of a poulter. And a scorching fury surged through Tally, and urged to smash the woman down. She fought it. Mamma had told her not to make a sound. The woman rocketed back and forth as she scanned the cellar. Crack, crack, standing on Tally's beautiful Mamma, as if she were a piece of firewood. Then followed the man. Once they were gone, Tally darted across and touched the crimson beads on her finger to her Mamma's head, as if her own blood could heal her. There was blood everywhere, but none left in Mamma. Taking hold of her hand, Tally squeezed it tightly, trying to will Mamma back to life, but the spirit had left her forever. She had taught Tally not to fight back, to always bow her head and say, "Yes, master." And it had killed her. Tally wasn't going to make that mistake. Mamma said it was wrong to hate people, but Tally's rage had red-hot teeth and talons as sharp as spikes. How dare they treat her beautiful Mamma that way? When I'm grown up, I'll find them out, she whispered, hand upon her mother's heart. Once I get my gift, I'll hunt them down and make them pay. Someone took a heavy breath close by. The murderers, coming back to kill her. Tally scuttled into the shadows between two of the stone bins, grabbed a gray stick protruding from its broken top, and prepared to defend herself. But it was a handsome black-haired boy, a few years older than herself, who stumbled out from behind a heap of empty barrels. He wasn't a slave, though, nor a tattooed Scythian. He must have been rich, for he wore a plum-colored velvet coat with gold buttons, an emerald kilt and shoes with shiny buckles. His face was white, his eyes a rich purply brown. His yellow vest was covered in vomit. Ew, and his teeth were chattering. That wasn't the only odd thing about him. The faintest misty aura, pale pink as the gills of a mushroom, clung to his head and hands. The aura of Marjorie, though not his. Tally could tell that he had no more gift than a log. The boy reached out towards Mamma, then drew back sharply, staring at his hands. Tally's hair stood up. His hands were covered in blood, yet he hadn't touched Mamma. He doubled over, sickened onto his shoes, and let out a moan of an animal in pain. Tally must have made a sound, for his head shot him round, and he stared at her, then bolted up the stairs, yanking on the rope as he went. The iron staircase howled as it rose with him out of sight. Tally could hold back no longer. "I'm going to get you," she screeched, brandishing the stick. A trap door clanged shut, and the greenish light began to fade. What if Tiny Head was waiting outside? Tally shivered. What if he came after her? No, he had betrayed Mamma, and he had to pay. Rage swelled until her heart felt as if it was going to explode. Then she pointed the stick at the stone door, willing Tiny Head's head to burst like a melon. With a sudden gush, the pressure was gone, and her rage as well. She was holding the stick so tightly that her knuckles hurt, and for the first time Tally saw it clearly. It wasn't a stick, it was a human thigh bone. There was something horrible about it, though. Oddly, it felt like a friend. Tally put it back where she had found it. Now so exhausted that she could barely stand up, she stumbled to the door, trying not to think about the man with the knife or the woman and her golden tongs, trying to wipe out the memories forever. When she slipped into the painted tunnel that led back to Scifi, there was no sign of Tiny Head. Learn to lower your head and say, "Yes, master." "All right," Tally said savagely, "but once I come of age, once I find my gift, look out." How could she find her gift when she couldn't trust anyone? How could she beat her enemy when no one knew who he was? Blinded by scalding tears, she crept home to Scifi and slavery. At least she would be safe there. I have no interest in reading any more of this. It's not really... It's like unholy magic. It's not really telling me anything. I'm having to guess. And honestly, I don't feel an attachment to any of the characters. I sort of started to feel an attachment to Will, but then his eyes just kind of bled out from his skull, and then I guess a demon or something took over him, because apparently it wasn't Will anymore or something. But I'm done with it. I mean, I really have nothing to say about it, and that really says everything. I really don't care for it, and I'm not going to follow up with it. So, I'm Caleb, and this has been Red Knot. Thank you for listening. Bye!